Let's talk about a bit of a different coverage today, one that we don't typically think of as its own thing, but it certainly is, and that is cover 2 blitz coverage. This is a matching defense, okay, kind of similar to when you look at cover 3 blitzes. That's a matching defense. This is unlike your Tampa 2, even though in many cases it looks like it, where you have those light blue zones from the corners, those deep blue zones from the safeties, and the middle guys are in yellow zones. You can basically consider this a man-to-man defense in many cases, and in most cases, it's going to look closer to 2-man under or cover 2-man, whatever you want to call it, than it does to Tampa 2. And that's kind of good and bad, but we're going to get into it. We've kind of got into the rules of these types of coverages in a couple of videos already this year. Namely, with a couple of patches ago, there were some significant improvements in terms of cover 2 matching. And I think I was talking about it in relation to cover 9 and cover 6, where one side you have cover 2 and then the other side you have cover 4. Or even in some cases, you could get cover 2 matching on both sides. And it kind of works out pretty nicely, to be honest with you. Right here, things get a little bit interesting. And I think if you're going to be running cover 2 blitzes, you really should know what's going on because, we have basically 4 underneath zones that are going to match the wide receivers. And then you have these 2 deep zones over the top. And in most cases, you're going to have a 5th receiver that just isn't accounted for. And we need to know exactly who that is and in which cases if we want to run this. Okay, so this video will just be about this coverage. Today, we're going to do it out of an interesting formation that I've been dabbling with a little bit, and that's the dime rush formation. Okay, and a couple of reasons why I like dime rush, and we won't get into it too much in this video, but I'm sure we'll do another video at some point. A couple of reasons I like it is, number one is that the personnel is symmetrical. So you have, your 4 down linemen, so 2 interior guys, 2 edge guys. So the personnel is symmetrical there. Then you have your inside linebacker, right? Just 1 linebacker. And then basically your Sam and your Will are slot cornerbacks. Okay, so you have your starting slot cornerback over here and then your backup slot cornerback over here. And I don't know when this happened, but conventionally when we think about dime defenses in Madden, this, the second nickel, the dime backer, is usually lined up outside of the box. And that kind of creates some issues, specifically, if you're coming up against trip sets or something like this, like doubles, where you're really going to be weak against the run. And I know dime is primarily kind of a passing defense, but you do still want to have some run integrity. But what's cool, and I think it's just, because of maybe the coverage shells or the coverage disguise, but when you do like show 2 or show 4, he'll actually get inside the box to a point where this is actually a reasonable look in terms of the run game. Now, obviously, you are light where you have a corner inside the box. That's, not even a safety, let alone a linebacker. But just the reality of this game, the weight doesn't seem to play a big impact in terms of the run game. It's really just about getting the numbers in there is really all that matters. And you could, and what I do is I sub him out for a safety anyway. But, it depends, obviously, what game mode you're playing, what your team's looking like, things like that. So I really like that symmetrical look because, obviously, when your opponent's doing all sorts of flips and things like that and motions, it's just nice to not have to have your nickel kind of run around across the field. You can just bump that over. You're always going to have a nickel to the passing strength, whichever way it is. And the other reason why I like it is that he gets basically outside linebacker adjustments. So you get, number one, you get seam flat, and number 2 is you get vertical hook. And those are quite useful, particularly if you run a lot of match and you want to change up the look a little bit. Okay, when you can't get that basically out of nickel unless you're running something like nickel 335, nickel 335 penny or nickel 33 odd, where that your outside linebacker on the weak side is basically kind of that hybrid edge linebacker type of guy that you can get those adjustments. But regular nickel fronts, that guy's an inside linebacker, and he gets things like mid-read, which just aren't too useful for that position. What I really like it is seam flat, allows you to do some really good adjustments out or for quarters and palms, particularly against trips. If you're interested in that, I would highly recommend subscribing or joining the Deuce Close Plus YouTube membership. We have a recent video that talks about a great way of handling running backs out of the backfield when you're running quarters or palms. So I definitely recommend that. Another reason why I like this formation is that you don't really have anybody on the center. And depending on your personnel, especially if you're playing Ultimate Team and you got double or nothings, things like that, there are opportunities for you to get a lot of quick block shed, a lot of quick one-on-one block sheds. So, obviously there's some considerations in terms of the run game, but really this type of alignment is nice in terms of getting a strong pass rush from all four of your down linemen, not just three, right? Because you're always going to have one that can get double teamed, but in this way we can make it a little bit harder to get double teamed. Okay, but again, we'll talk more about this probably in another video. So lots of rambling without talking about the main thing or the main topic of this video as usual, but I think it's always fun to set things up a little bit, give you some context that is much needed. Okay, so let's go ahead and into the coverage. We're going to keep it, somewhat straightforward, somewhat simple. We're going to be looking at it right now in 2x2. We're also going to look at it after this in trips. And after that, we'll also look at it empty because things really break down when you use this against empty. We're not going to be talking about the blitz itself. Okay, so we're thinking about just the coverage, right? So you'll want to find the best, blitz depending on the front you're using and who's blitzing and things like that. But right now we're just talking about the coverage. Okay, so throughout this video, this guy, we might send this guy a few times. He might get in, might not get in. That's not really what we care about right now. We're just talking about the coverage. So in terms of the coverage, what you can think about is we're basically playing cover 2 man, but we have the option, or not even the option, but the possibility of certain defenders and certain receivers swapping depending on what the route combination is. Okay, so if we run 4 verticals, what you'll see is that the soft squats will have the outside receivers, the vertical hook will have the inside receivers, and the safeties will cap over the top. Okay, so we'll go ahead and run that, and we'll see how it looks. And also you'll see my quarterback doing weird things throughout this video because one of my controller has some serious stick drift, which is always annoying. Okay, so again, what we see here, we see matching, we see matching, we see matching, we see matching. And in many cases, what you'll see is a trail technique, okay, because we have safeties over the top helping to cap things. So this looks very similar to cover 2 man. Okay. Now, the first question that'll come to your head is what's going on with the running back? And the simple answer is that nothing. In this case, we have absolutely nobody responsible for the running back. Nobody is looking at him. Nobody's looking to guard him. So that's one thing you have to know right away. Throughout what I'm going to show you, the running back is not considered part of the coverage. Now, there's a few considerations you can take here. Number one is use this coverage in certain situations where the back just isn't a threat. Okay, particularly if your opponent is blocking him frequently, if it's, 3rd or 4th and long, and, a running back route is likely not to give you any real headache, where you can, let that check down go and these guys can come off their men and rally down for the tackle. But yeah, the reality is just nobody has him. Now, I will say that there are a few weird cases where you might get the vertical hook and the soft squat on that side to just abandon their man and come down. I still haven't figured out why they do that. It's not super common. It's not super repeatable, but it is what it is. So you can get into situations like this. Maybe we'll just do a Texas route right here, where everybody's matching, and then, yeah, so you're right there. So I don't know exactly why they did that, because I bet you if I were to do that over again, you know, he won't come off. But there are situations where basically the vertical hook or the soft squat will let their man free and come down on the running back. And obviously we don't want that because nobody's covered. In this case, you can still throw it to the running back like I did, and he's letting the tight end free. And the safety's certainly not going to match him, so he's just there. You could throw that ball right here and score for a touchdown. So that's, you know, not nice. We don't like that because this guy's covering absolutely nobody. But it is what it is. You know, you can consider the running back to be not guarded like this, but in some cases, the defenders will come down on him. So that's one thing to consider. The next thing to consider is that if your opponent is running check releases, what you can basically say is that this blitzing linebacker has the back man-to-man. Okay, so I'm going to do this little setup right here. We're going to go like this, and you'll see that the running back is blocking the blitzer. So this is something I've said a few times over these last videos. You know, we're sending the blitz. We're hoping to get through. The idea is we want to find a blitz where it's really hot. You know, this one is no good. He's just looping around like crazy. Even if he comes in, it's going to take forever. So there's better blitzes out there that you can look at. But the idea is we want to find a blitz that can come through hot. Okay? And if the back doesn't block, then it's, you know, within a couple seconds you're getting that sack. Okay? But if he does, okay, that's, you know, he's likely going to get picked up. Our blitzer is likely going to get picked up, which is, you know, obviously we want the blitz to come in. But in this case, it's not so bad because if we think about it in a different way, if that back was on a route and if we were to put somebody in man-to-man coverage on that back has a good chance of beating his man in man-to-man. So in this case, what you consider is we're taking the running back out of the passing game. And, okay, this is a cornerback blitzing, but if this was a linebacker, in many cases he can make short work of that and still come in to the quarterback. So that's the kind of mindset that I've started having. Oh my God, just forgive my controller again. That's the kind of mindset I've been having with this. So, you know, feel free to send that fifth guy a lot, especially if your opponent is blocking the running back, check releasing the running back. This can really change the numbers in your favor because, again, and I've said this a few times, I believe 6-on-4 is better than 7-on-5 if you just do the math that way. So you basically have 3/2 on one side and 3/2 on the other side, and I think that's working, again, in your favor. The other thing is that you can, as a user, just keep your eye on the back, right? Again, the idea is that if we have a hot blitz, a good blitz that's coming in screaming, we can kind of user the safety on the running back side and just kind of keep an eye on that, right? We're not really responsible for anybody vertical, so we can just kind of keep an eye on that and then rally down. We don't need to come right down on the running back, right? We're not like playing hard man coverage on him, but we can kind of keep an eye on him. You know, if he blocks, we're still going to play our deep half or whatever we want. But if he's swinging out and, you know, the quarterback ends up, or your opponent ends up throwing to him, you know, you'll be there ready to make a, you know, rally down and make a tackle to make sure there's no first down. So that's kind of the consideration that I make. I'll let these guys underneath do their thing, and I will simply just user the safety on that side and come down on the running back. The problem here, though, is that you do have an opportunity for your opponent to hit you over the top if you are kind of just passive and just waiting for that running back, because these underneath guys do play kind of a trail technique, right? So even if these guys are in man coverage, they're playing underneath. Okay, so that's the kind of problem there. So there's kind of give and take in terms of you're being aggressive in the pass rush. We're sending that extra guy in the pass rush. We are, you know, trying to account for the running back with the safety. And if you have your eyes in the backfield, looking at the quarterback, looking at the running back, you could get yourself into a bad situation over the top. Now, depending on how you align these guys, it might not be a big issue. Like if these guys are lined off, you saw there, okay, whatever, the pressure came through. But if you align off, even though they're kind of programmed to be in a trail position, he's so far deep that he's basically, covering him over the top. So you can get those soft squats to basically play like man-to-man with no help over the top. The problem is, of course, the interior guys, the vertical hook. So that's something to consider. So depending on who your guy is there, I think if this is like a safety type, I think he'll be able to make this not as big of a deal, because you see over here, although this guy gets beat, he's not really in a trail. I guess he kind of lets himself trail. But in any case, be careful, okay? All I'm trying to say. Be careful if you're on that safety. Okay, so that's that. But the next question is, why am I running this? Okay, so we're already, I don't know how many minutes into the video. Why am I running this if one of the receivers isn't even guarded and the other guys are kind of, in trail type of thing? Well, the reason is because it can kind of mess with your opponent, right? It looks like cover 2 man, but you can get these swapping situations that can really mess with your opponent. Okay, so let's give the simplest possible example. Just over here, maybe you're trying to run a zig. Actually, I don't think a zig would get switched, swap. Oh my God. I don't know how to talk anymore. Anyway, a zig won't come down, but let's say something like this, a little out route. You'll see you can get baited into bad throws like that. Okay, especially if you have this kind of off look. Your opponent might think, okay, you might have an opportunity, to throw these quick outbreaking routes because the defender above him has inside leverage. I don't know. So yeah, those types of routes can get baited. You throw those and you have the opponent's cornerback, or sorry, in this case, your cornerback ready to make a play on that ball. Not in too many cases he'll actually make an interception, but it definitely messes with things. Okay, it definitely messes with things. And it's not just shallow routes like quick flats, quick speed outs, things like that. It's also these kind of intermediate corner and outbreaking routes as well. Okay, so this corner, as we know, he's programmed to come down on those out routes. Now, deep sail routes, things like that, he's not going to come down on. That's the responsibility of the vertical hook with help over the top with the safety. But there are these kind of gray area intermediate routes that he will come down that are going to be really unexpected for your opponent and can cause interceptions in big plays. So let's look at this corner, or the ever prevalent stem down corner, things like that. You'll see that the corner does come down on this and make a play on that. Again, it looks like cover 2 man, or even it looks like cover 2 where the safety is really dropping deep, like on a custom drop vertical cloud flat that's going 20-30 yards, because he's not jamming that guy. But before you know it, again, you're throwing it right into the arms of that trapping corner. So that's why I like it. It's not necessarily that, okay, here's another funky way that we can run cover 2 man. It's these kind of swapping combinations. The other thing is that I feel like these vertical hooks do a really good job at covering inside breaking routes. So like drag routes, he does an okay job right there. Let's run like a little post route right here. He does a terrific job right there. On obviously corner routes, like deeper corner routes, so not those like what I showed you with the tight end right there. For deeper ones, that corner doesn't come off. Although I kind of wish he did, to be honest. Like, you're always going to have that safety over the top. I wish that soft squat would even come down on these deeper corners. But in any case, he's just going to look right at that wide receiver all the way. We can't count on him to be there. But the vertical hook does match, which is great. But he's matching with an inside position, inside shade, inside leverage, right? And so naturally, you are going to give this up. Now, again, it kind of depends on a few things. It depends on the matchup. It depends on if your opponent sees that in time, if he's able to throw it on the break, that type of thing, like I just showed you there. But, it is still nice that if you were to come down, if your opponent were to come to it late, then he can't throw that, right? So he needs to kind of be expecting that. And in a situation where, your opponent is kind of going between shorter corners and deeper corners and doesn't know, at what depth this corner is going to come off of, it can mess with things. It can mess with things, and I think you're basically using the unknown of this coverage to your advantage, right? Not too many people are going and practicing in practice mode against this coverage, so they don't know all of those fine subtleties about it. Other things, routes like this, like slant flat or glance flat, they do get swapped as well. So the soft squat comes down and the vertical hook does a great job of converting, and with the help of the safety help over the top. Now, again, even if things are on paper covered, doesn't mean they're actually covered. Okay, so in this case, we had kind of double coverage. So this is an interesting actually route combination. Depending on this drift, depending on the depth of this post route, and depending on how far away these guys are from each other, or even these defenders are from each other, you'll have somebody different matching the post. Okay, so in many cases you'll get this, where the vertical hook comes off of the flat and he matches the post. But in some cases you might actually get this guy matching the post, believe it or not. So yeah, so you might see this, you might see this. In this case, you kind of had like a bracket here, and this guy just led his man right past him. I don't know why. Sometimes he does a great job, sometimes he doesn't. But if I were to run this a few more times, you'll see it's a little bit different each time. And I think for whatever reason, even though he's a good defender, I think Dejean isn't really good at this stuff in the game. I haven't really figured out why. But anyway, another thing you can do if you are using the safety is you can, work off the route combination or the route distribution of what you're getting, right? Because if you get if you get a flat from number 2, basically that, number 1's basically going to be coming back in, right? So then you can kind of help your guy over the top here, okay? But anyway, that's maybe a topic for another video, because there's still a few things that I want to talk about in this one. Okay, so that's basically it. Think about it as cover 2 man, where you have the opportunity to swap certain routes and really mess with your opponent's reads. Let's go to trips right here, because things get quite interesting. Let's go Y trips. Let's go back to dime blitz 2. Another reason why I like this particular cover 2 blitz is that the blitz is coming from the will. Okay, in this case, the dime will. And so what you get here is you get a zone, or I don't like to call it a zone, but in this case, we'll call it a zone. You have a zone over 1, a zone over 2, and you have a zone over 3. So these guys are nicely aligned over the guys that they're going to match. And so here's the funny thing. When you look at the play art, you look at this inside linebacker, this Mike, and it looks like he's covering the zone on the left side of the screen. But in reality, what his responsibility is this. Okay, so we're getting this 3/2 triangle behavior over 1 and 2 that we've been talking about, where this guy's capping, this guy's man-to-man on 2, this guy's man-to-man on number 1, but they do have the opportunity to, again, swap depending on the route distribution. Over here, you have man-to-man on 1, you have the deep half zone over here, you're basically man-to-man on number 3 right here. Let's go like this. Oh, and I was doing some shading. That's going to mess with things. And again, nobody's on the running back. So let's do this, and we'll see how things play out. Okay, cool. So let's look at the instant replay. So again, you probably saw there that nobody was on the running back. So again, you basically are running this when you don't expect the running back to get it, or if he does, it's a catch here, and the hope is that it's a third and 10 or 15 or more, and you can come down and make a tackle on that. Particularly if you are on this safety, you're looking at that running back. If he gets it, then you bolt down and try to get him. But anyway, you have man-to-man over here. Again, you can back that corner off if you don't want him in trail. The trail is nice though. Like if you do have the safety over the top here and this guy were to run a comeback, the trail is nice there. Over here, this linebacker does a terrific job at covering crossing routes for number 3. I think he does a better job than just a regular man coverage for whatever reason. So he does just an absolutely terrific job right here. Now, if this tight end were to run a corner route, then he will be out leveraged, right? So this guy's got inside position. So if number 3, the tight end, were to run a corner route, you'd have difficulties there. Over here, inside position, a little bit of a trail technique, but if you were to throw that over the top, the safety's there to help out, and the same thing, man-to-man over here. Okay? So it's not necessarily that these guys are relating to, 1 and 2 and 2 and 1. It's simply that they're relating to the receivers. They're just ignoring the running back, right? Because in doubles, the running back was number 3. In trips, the running back is number 2. But in either case, this coverage is ignoring the running back. Okay? Now, if you do want to run this as an actual coverage, and you are, worried about the running back, you can take this blitzing linebacker or blitzing whatever he is and put a man-to-man on the back. So now you are truly playing a coverage that can, handle every responsibility. Okay, so again, this is kind of like 2-man, but you have the opportunity to swap different route combinations to get better leverage on them. You won't always have the best leverage, but you'll likely have better opportunities than just running regular 2-man. And what I like to do is I like to use this guy myself, because in many cases, that back is just going to fry this guy anyway, no matter who he is. But you as a user, you can see, okay, he's running a Texas route, or okay, he's running a flat, or okay, he's swinging the other way. You can see that. You can adapt much, much quicker than your opponent, in my opinion. So in some cases, I like to just user on the running back, just X him out, cross him out of the possible reads, and then again, you're back to this square one of you're playing 3/2. On one side. In trips, it kind of gets stretched because you can think of the 2 as being the tight end, right? You have this kind of look over here, and then you have a nice 3/2 over these guys. So trips, things get a little bit stretched, but yeah, that's kind of the idea there. Lastly, let's just quickly talk about empty. Why you really got to be careful in empty. Where is my empty in my custom book here? Empty base. So in this case, there's no back. Okay, so who is going to get left uncovered? Okay, so let's run 5 verticals right here, and we'll see what happens. Pretty bizarre stuff. So in this case, you have basically it's like matching from left to right, kind of. Like the soft squats will always be on number 1. Always will be on number 1. These deep halves are always zoning off. There are some cases where they might match post routes, but for all intents and purposes, these guys are just zoning off. Now this guy, instead of being on the tight end number 3 like in trips, he's on the backside number 2, which is pretty wild. And now there's nobody on number 3, so this guy bumps over. Instead of covering number 2, he bumps over on number 3, and number 2 is, nobody's man. I mean, he's running right at the deep half safety, so you could say that he's kind of effectively covered. But, if this guy were to break off, like if he were to just stop right here, he'd be completely wide open. So you really, really have to be careful here. I think your best bet, in my opinion, if you really want to blitz, is you make sure that you have a vertical hook on this side. You would probably blitz this guy, And then you would still have this vertical hook kicking over to the 3. And then again, similar to how I recommended that you are using the deep half safety to kind of cheat over, you're still helping your side, but you're cheating a little bit to the uncovered guy, right? So if you get this type of deal, you kind of have to go with number 2 and allow your friend in the middle to get absolutely smoked by that double move. Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I would do it. But honestly, I probably just wouldn't run this blitz against empty at all. I think blitzing empty in general is really, really difficult. I mean, I think when you look at it, it's like, okay, they have no back, they have no tight end. We can really let it fly or, let the heat come. But you're just exposing yourself so much by dropping one of those players. Especially, this coverage, even in cover 3 fire zones or even like cover zeros, it's really, really difficult to cover this spread 5 receiver set with only so many guys. Okay. Anyway, that's it. I wish I could say, this is the world's best coverage and that you should use it more. But, it definitely does have some drawbacks. Obviously, we went over a few of them. But I do think there are some interesting aspects of it for sure. And I think if you have, I shouldn't even say this, but if you have the right guys to run it, I say I don't want to say it because I don't really know what the coverage ratings are, or what the ratings are that will allow you to, not get burnt on those, double move routes underneath like you just saw in the last one, or even certain post routes that seem to get open against inside leverage position. But anyway, I think it's at least somewhat solidly programmed, and I'm looking forward to further improvements in the future, hopefully. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this one. If you've used it before and if you found a way of running it that mitigates some of these issues that I brought. Always interesting to know your guys' opinion. But anyway, that's it for this one. We'll see you in the next.